So to start, I'd really like to see who is in our audience. So if you are a manager, can you please put your hand up? Everybody look at those managers, because there's so few of them. Okay, if you're an artist, put your hand up. Cool. If you're a producer, and if you're an industry person, you're providing a service to artists. Great, cool. For those artists put their hands up, who wants to get on a festival? Cool, awesome. Let's start setting some goals. Lots to learn in this session. So what we're talking about is how to, part of your career is live performance. That's why we're here today. And part of that is pitching your band, your performance, your art, your music to festivals and to booking agents and to promoters. What we're going to do is we're going to start with introductions. I'm going to ask each of the panel to introduce themselves, and then we'll look at what really is a pitch. So, Cuillin.
Hi, my name's Cuillin. I am a music manager. I manage a band called There's a Tuesday, Frank on Tap, and a soloist called Sofia Machray. And I also work at Big Fan, which is a recording studio and live music venue. And I also work with Banished Music.
Wonderful, thank you. Gavin.
My name is Gavin Downie, and my day job is I program and look after the Auckland Council Music and Park series, which is about 18 shows over summer every year, booking about 70 artists. I do another few various events, matariki events, Waitangi events across the city, from the big one out in West Auckland to ones out south. I freelance doing production managing for festivals. I stage manage some festivals. I do backline work, and I tour occasionally when I kind of feel like getting out the house for a while.
Fantastic, thank you. And John.
Kia ora, koutou. My name's John Minty. I run Splore Festival and have been doing music programming since 2006.
Fantastic. Lots of, it was nice and short, unlike most of us that have got 20 jobs. Let's start with pitch. What is a pitch? Do you want to start with that, John? What a pitch is for you and Splore?
Yeah, I guess it's changed, like, since I've been booking Splore for so long. Pitches generally, they're a lot more sophisticated now than they used to be. Used to be all hard copy and CDs back in the day. And that filled up my study with all those CDs. But now it's a lot more efficient, and I think people generally are pretty good at pitching. They know the sort of information that we need in terms of social media, YouTube clips of live performances. One of the big things for me is the live performance. So it really helps for a new band, particularly that maybe doesn't have a YouTube video out, to give me some sort of live clip of them performing, even if it's just a small gig, because I do look at live performances very heavily. But I think the main thing with pitching is that you've got to be targeted. You've got to know the right place to pitch to. So if you're looking at any event, say Splore, for example, you need to study what sort of artists do appeal at Splore. And Splore's been going a long time, so ask around people that have been to Splore to get feedback, if you haven't been, as to the sort of artists that work.
Fantastic, thank you. Gavin?
A pitch, I'd say a pitch to me, in the shows that I'm doing, I'm getting a lot of basically bands that want to come and book one of the shows that I'm playing. So, generally they either know the event that I do and they're keen to use it as a stepping stone into their career path. And it's them selling themselves and their brand to me and convincing me that I should, book them, give them a shot and get them involved. And because of my series and the way it's run, we take pitches from brand new emerging acts to well-established acts with management that'll actually pitch to me. So we kind of run quite a wide gamut compared to some of the bigger festivals that will really be mostly dealing with more kind of professional, well-established acts maybe.
Cuillin, how do you, because you stand at a different perspective, so you're going to be pitching to Gavin and pitching to John, and what's a pitch for you as a manager?
A pitch for me is normally an email, and normally it's quite concise as to where the artist's at, what they sound like or who they sound like and what genre and why they're at the right stage to be pitching for that festival. And it can also sometimes just be an invitation or a, hey, here's this artist. Like, it isn't always a pitch in terms of actually playing.
Is part of your pitch inviting promoters and bookers to shows? And for you guys, is that important if managers or artists are building that relationship with you to get you to come to their shows? Is that an essential part of the pitch?
I don't think it's an essential part of the pitch, because I might be booking a band from Christchurch and I'm not going to be able to fly to Christchurch on Friday night. It's really great for them to say, hey, we're doing this album release. These are the shows. If you're near the city, come along to it. If it's an Auckland band, yeah, it's definitely great to be able to go and see bands live. But just with the sheer number of bands that a lot of us are booking at, we won't be able to get to every show. So it's the more information, the more experience you get with the band, the better, obviously, but it's not essential. If you've got a really good pitch that sums up who you are, what you're doing, where you want to go, and, you know, kind of can summarize that into a couple of paragraphs with a couple of social media links, maybe a YouTube video link or something, even if it's a video of you guys in a practice room or the band playing at a show, like, that can be enough for me.
So it doesn't have to be a sophisticated
No,
pitch or
not at
glossy
all.
video?
No, it doesn't have to be at all. I think it's sometimes some bands get hooked up on sending the same pitch that they've been using for 3 or 4 years, and I've seen that come through every year. Nothing's been updated, and it's kind of like, if you have done anything in the past year, update it. If you haven't, then that's worrying. So, yeah, and like I said, like, it doesn't need to be an amazingly produced music video. It can be if someone goes to Whammy Bar and videos a show and it looks amazing and the energy is crazy, you're going to be like, yeah, that band is awesome. I want that as part of my series. So it just has to capture, your pitch has to capture your band, you as an artist, your brand at its best moment, I think.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the times I do get formal pitches, but quite often I really appreciate when agents and managers or bands reach out and just let me know by email they've got a new album coming out, and particularly if they've got a release party. I'm based in Auckland, so a lot of gigs are here, so it's very handy for me. Pop down to Whammy and Neck of the Woods or Big Fans, and I'm very supportive if I'm here to come along to as many gigs as possible, because quite often when I get an email pitch and there's maybe a SoundCloud or a Spotify link and I listen to that music and I think, okay, it's okay, but it really does help to see a band live, and then I can go, well, actually it's not that great, or they're amazing. So I just hide at the back of the room, and if it's not great, I'll sneak out so you won't see me there.
I've seen you in the back of many rooms, John. And what about you, Cuillin? Anything?
I think one thing I do like to do in a pitch is sort of leave a call to action where I'll be like, hey, we've got this single coming out and this album's coming out, or we're coming on tour. I'll get in touch again closer to the time. Like, because these people's inboxes are pretty full. So I like to leave a little nudge to say that I will get in touch again. That might be annoying, but it's just a tool that I use.
So let's talk about, when are you ready to pitch? How can artists tell they're ready to pitch to you, to put their best foot forward with the best opportunity to get onto your festival bill? Are there certain things that artists, managers should be thinking about where their acts are in their performance?
I think it's really important that you know your show package, and I get bands that want to play them like, how long's your average set? And they'll be like, oh, we can play from this to this. But if you say, at the moment we've got, we can do a really solid 30-minute set, or we can do a really solid 45-minute set, or on our own shows we can play 60 minutes or longer. But it's good to know what you're packaging to sell to that festival, and look at what the festivals, if you want to play a festival where every slot is 30 minutes, there's no point going in and trying to sell them a 45-minute slot, because it's just not going to work. So kind of when you know you've got a really solid 30-minute set, set, or you might have 3 or 4 variations of that 30-minute set. That's when you can go, now we want to book those shows, now we want to go out and pitch that. Because what you're doing is you're basically selling your show that the promoter is then going to sell their tickets based on. So you need to know that you're ready to deliver that live set in whatever form it is to the festival or booker.
Cuillin, anything to add to that?
I think knowing like what you've got coming up, because at the end of the day, like a festival or a show, they want to know how many tickets you can sell for them. So if you know you've got a release coming up before summer, an album coming out before summer, then they'll know that you've got momentum going, and there'll be a reason why their audience will want to come to see you at their festival. So
what we're talking about is whoever's pitching needs to do their research, right?
To me, that's an important one. I get a lot of pitches, obviously, every year, and I look at some of them, and I could say 60-70% of them are not acts that would actually play Splore, because it's a bit of a scattergun approach where a lot of acts will just send, obviously, emails to a lot of different events. So it's probably better to target, and look at the acts that have played that event before. So, and Splore's been going like over 20 years, so there's a great, it's easy to look at all the acts that have played Splore. And I don't book generally acts necessarily that sell tickets, particularly local acts. I'm always looking for acts which are new and different genres, that have a sort of an X factor, charisma on stage. And we've had a lot of acts at Splore over the years that definitely weren't household names. And I'm very open to that. So a lot of it to me comes down to obviously the quality of the music, but also the buzz around that particular act. Is it creating, are you creating a little fan base that are very loyal? So if you're doing a gig at Big Fan, or you're doing a gig at, say, Whammy, one of the things I do quite often is when I see an act, I'm not only judging the quality of the music, I'm also judging the quality of the followers. It's a key thing to see what the engagement is like between you and your followers. And the more you can nurture that, the better.
So you're talking about audience here, eh? What's their audience? What's their community? Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Gavin?
I think that's kind of it. I mean, it's like I get a lot of, I've seen a lot of bands come in and they'll tout these huge numbers of Facebook likes, and then you look at their Facebook page or social media and they haven't actually interacted with anyone for 3 or 4 years, or the last post was 2019. And you're like, it's how active your ecosystem is. So if you've got an active fan base that's 500 people, that's better than a band that says they've got 5,000 fans and no one's posted on their page in 5 years. So it's just knowing that you're active in your little world, and that's got a following. And if your kind of following is active enough to be on your social media, they're liable to come see you play. So, because as a promoter, you're leveraging, as much as the band is leveraging off the festival name, the festival is also leveraging off the band's popularity. So it's a give and take on both sides. So sometimes some festivals have the ability to take a shot on some kind of X factor unknown bands that might be in an early part of a career, but a lot of the time, we either have to sell tickets or make sure people turn up.
So what I'm hearing is that being able to put your best pitch forward, it's the ecosystem of not just is ensuring that everything around what you're doing is growing or happening, so that you're making sure your social media, because you're looking at that, you're looking at their shows that they're doing, you're looking at the music, you're looking at the community, you're looking at how they're engaging with you, all of these things. Yeah. Cuillin, how do you get your pitch ready when you're going to do a pitch for an artist?
When I get my pitch ready, before sending the pitch.
So you've gone, actually, my artist is ready to go out and do these. I'm ready to pitch this artist. What are you putting together to put that forward to bookers and promoters?
We normally have like a 1-pager, like an EPK, which I think was spoken about this morning, but a lot of the time, from what I'm told, a lot of promoters don't have time to read those EPKs. So I'm always just in one short email being like, what have our wins been? Like, what have we achieved recently? what do we have coming up, things like support slots we've achieved, and our plan for the next 6 to 12 months, depending on what's going on.
Is that what you like to see?
Yeah, totally.
Anything else?
I've seen some pictures that are like 6 pages long that have fully animated backdrops drawn, and they look amazing, but you don't have the time really to look through all of it. And if it's too over the top, I think they've lost what they're doing in pitching to someone that's going to book them. You know, I'm not the end result of an audience member going to see them. So if it's clear and concise, I like, you know, if it's an email, if it has 2 or 3 links to social media or something, or you know, other places in EPK that's there. Usually I kind of try and tell people, like, have a short version of your EPK and have a longer one if you want, because if you get booked as well, the festival or the show is going to need to be able to pluck something out of that to put into their media and advertising. So if you've got 10 pages of describing how you're the hardest working band in New Zealand with the most dynamic rhythm section, you've to wade through all this to find something to pull out and use. So if a band can, you know, just be like 2 paragraphs, this sums us up, ready to go, then that's helpful as well.
I guess when it's important for all of us to understand too is what goes into the programming, right? So thinking about genre, thinking about the energy that you're wanting to have the arc of your festival, your shows go, diversity, what sort of audience the acts will pull and stuff. So if you could just speak to what that looks like for you guys in programming, will actually help us to understand more about the pitch.
I'd just like to, just going back on the size of a pitch, if you really back yourself, there's probably not an issue with you doing a ambitious pitch. And I remember a relatively unknown band out of Dunedin many years ago that sent me a pitch. They had 4-colour brochures. They went overboard on it. Obviously, probably one of their parents was a marketer. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, this is amazing. It was just sounded like a generic reggae band. And my girlfriend at the time looked at it and said, look, they've put a lot of effort into this. You should make an effort to listen to this stuff. And I did, and I booked them. And it was a group called 660. And I paid them $1,500 to play Splore. So, you know, it's something that can, if you've got the confidence and you feel you've got, you know, be ambitious. You can be ambitious. You can bring in friends to help you out on the pitch. That can stand out sometimes. The question about what, diversity and...
Well, the thing about programming, how do you program when you're thinking about, you know, genre, energy, like all of that sort of stuff that goes into how you're going to decide what is being pitched to you? Is there any kind of behind-the-scenes tips that we can be aware of for when we're pitching?
Once again, I think it's a case of looking at the event's track record in terms of the acts they've had. Some events will have a very specific genre they follow, they dominate. If you look at Splore, it can be all over the place. You know, I booked Shepherd's Reign last year, and they were really surprised. I saw them do their album release party down at Whammy, and I thought, yeah, this could work at Splore. So when I approached them to play Splore, they were going, what, do you want us to play Splore? And I'm going, yeah, I think there's some heavy metalers at Splore. So when they played Splore, yeah, they were heavy metalers at Splore. So I thought, well, okay, and they were a great, entertaining band. I've had a Mississippi blues band I saw at South by Southwest one year. I brought them down, Reverend Payton's Big Damn Band. And that's not a genre I would ever thought I would have booked. But seeing them live, I thought, you know, this is entertaining. So they've been down 2 or 3 times. So there's always, I'm always looking for something a little bit different. So genre is not the big issue. I think 70% of the people that come to Splore, a lot of people that actually come to Splore don't know the lineup, or may not know 78% of the lineup. So that gives me a lot of latitude to book a lot of various acts that are not there to sell tickets. So it does give you some leverage. So it's a case of, if it's great music and it's entertaining, I'll definitely look at it.
Yeah, I think following up from Joe, I think a lot of festivals, if you've looked at them in the past 30 years, have become a lot more diverse. There was a sort of a a stage where festivals were very genre specific, and you were an EDM festival, you were a drum and bass festival, you were just a hard rock festival, you were a country festival. Whereas now I think, Splore, there's Auckland City Limits, there was things like Big Doubt, but they were just, festivals are taking more chances. Like I know Dave Dobbins played at Rhythm and Vines twice, and we all kind of went, wow, that's interesting. And she had played at Rhythm and Vines, and so it's, I think today, I think promoters, people that run these gigs are kind of knowing that it's nice to have those little bands that are maybe on the edges of what they'd normally do. So you should never shut yourself off to approaching any festival, but at least kind of do some research and go, okay, well, they started off just doing EDM, then they've started having a rock band, or they've started having this, and kind of maybe steer your pitch to that, saying, oh, she had play last year, we kind of fit in that same genre, and was that great for you guys? We could slot into that same place. So it's important to, do some research on who you're pitching to and the lineups they've had, the successes, if you can, see that, and then kind of work from that. But I think you should never really shut yourself off from everything unless it's such a complete not going to happen. But even just the act of pitching will make you better pitches, because you'll learn how to pitch better and compile everything you need to get into somewhere. So
I think something to add also, for festivals that have been around a long time, like Splore, and I've been around a while. So if you're a band that's been playing for quite a while, so I'm likely to know of you, it's better, rather than to see another pitch from you, is to see a new release, like a new album's coming out. You've got a new show, there's something a little bit different. And that just, there'll be a lot of acts there that I'm being very aware of for a long time. So they may not be on my radar straight away, but if they approach me and say, look, we've got a new album coming out, we've got a new show, we're doing a collaboration, that piques my interest to have a look at that act again.
So, okay, Cuillin, when are you going to start pitching for your acts for festivals?
For the summer festivals, probably around now is when people are starting to book things. And I guess depending on where they're pitching, where they're putting in artists, like it might not be a right now, but I think it's good to get in people's thoughts and minds early on in the year. So normally about May is when I start going out, at least.
And is that starting with emails?
Yeah, starting with emails.
Great. Or you might be doing the MMF Speed Networking Festival bookers.
You should be doing that. That's amazing.
Just a little plug for what we do there, but we put our members who have applied for this into a speed networking opportunity with about 20 festival bookers around the country. So you get to speak to these bookers directly.
For 7 minutes.
For 7 minutes.
So you've got to be on your game.
You've got to get.
But I tell you, the first one you do is normally rough. By the end of the night, people have it down to like 3 minutes, and then you're sitting there going, so what have you been doing this week? That's good.
And that's building relationships, right?
Yeah, it's really good. That's like, honestly, it is probably these days, I would say, nearly half of the bands that I look at and get through. And it's just really a good time to kind of catch up with bands. There's even bands that I know will still, put down to talk to me, and they'll just update me on a recording they've done or a tour and stuff, and just keep in that kind of loop.
So it's that thing, right? If you don't get it this year, try again next year and build those relationships. What about, I'd like to hear from both of you, like when do the pitches start coming into you for your respective festivals?
Mine come in all the time. Pretty much, because my season is sort of the second week in January till April. So people are going to shows, coming up to me at the event and saying, are you the organizer? I'd like to play this. So I sort of give them my email address. They go from there. Then there'll be people approaching us via our social media through Facebook or Instagram. And then there'll just be people that'll track down the Music and Parks website and then just email throughout the year. I generally try and tell people we kind of get through the season and then we start looking at bands in about June, July. So send me something now, but then come back around and just keep bugging, because...
When do you cut off?
We cut off in, I think... To be honest, we don't fully cut off, because with booking 70 bands, I've had bands split up, bands that have just no longer been together, bands that have had arguments, bands that have gone from 10-piece to 2-piece, bands that can't make it, bands that get COVID. So constantly having people apply to me, I always have things that are coming in, and if a band is if a band is, say, active or they're booking a tour and they don't know that till December and they contact me in December and say, hey, we're out doing this, I'll be like, yeah, I'll keep you in mind. And there's a lot of times where we have to grab a band quickly. So,
What about you, John?
I'm not sure about other festivals. They may do the same thing. We have a participate section on our Splore website, so you can apply through that at any time of the year and indicate that you want to play Splore. And I generally don't look at it week to week, but when I'm in my booking mode, which is May and June for summer gigs, that's when I start reviewing that file of people that have applied. Worth bearing in mind, if you have applied, let's say, quite early and put something onto my my list, definitely worth following it up with an email in that sort of May, June period, just to remind me that you're there, that you've put a pitch in. But you've got to bear in mind there's about probably 800, maybe not that many, maybe 400 or 500 acts on that database. And as I said, I do generally quite conscientious or go through them all, but I can, having been doing the business a long time, I generally can qualify those that are possibles quite quickly, and then I can potentially follow them up and read the full detail of their pitch.
5 minutes. Oh, till questions. Okay, cool. When do we start having conversations about fees? Like, do you talk fees straight away in your pitch, or do you wait for them to come back and show interest? And then, because that's often a difficult thing for people to know where to pitch themselves fee-wise as well. So when does that conversation start? And what other information do people that are pitching require to get to you soon? Because I imagine fees and tech riders and all of that comes into the mix of what you can do. Do you want to speak to us about that?
I'll go first.
You go first.
I'm normally pretty upfront in terms of remuneration. The process is when I identify a group that I am definitely keen on for Splore, and I generally then make a phone call to the manager or to the agent or to the band and talk in terms of specifics about what sort of show it is. Generally my gigs are 60-minute sets to see what they can fill that with, and then I generally raise the issue of fees. And my general approach to that for most artists is, what is your fee expectation? So bearing in mind that they know I'm representing Splore, they know how big that is or how small it is, generally it gives me a guide as to what we're talking about. I mean, some acts may undersell themselves. I generally don't take advantage of that. I generally think, well, if an act, I'm going to put them on the main stage on an afternoon or a naked eye stage, I might offer a bit more than what they're asking for. So just be too careful you don't pitch too low, but don't scare the promoter away either by putting down what you'd love to have. Normally, if it's a band that I really like and they do pitch a higher fee, we just get straight into negotiation, and quite often we agree something quite quickly.
I think it's important, for one, when you're pitching, you're not ready to pitch if you don't have a tech rider together yet, because if someone wants to jump on that pitch, say, yeah, would love to book you, we say, can you send us your tech rider? And they go, what is that? Or what's, even a stage plot. So it's having all that stuff organised. So that's, the list of what you guys use on stage, the list of what you need, how many mics, things like that, a stage plot, because, it's every show, every festival these days wants that ahead of time. No one wants a band to turn up and no one knows what's going on. So I think that's good to have. I think I always come to tell bands, I like the sentence, we usually charge X amount, but we're open to negotiation. It's because New Zealand, in the way that its festival season goes, everyone does their festivals in the space of about 1 month, almost it is in New Zealand over summer. So some bands are wary that if they do a special deal to me, they won't get the big fee from the other festival, or they may only go, look, we're trying to get lots of shows paying us say $5,000, so we don't want to do a lower fee. So sometimes it's up to the artist to decide if they're willing to take that cut, because obviously they want to go up the ranks and what they're making, and if their show is costing them more each time. But I think it comes down to, but if you've had a good pitch and someone's interested, then you could kind of ask the promoter, what's normally the fees you're paying your bands, and promoters will tell you straight away what they kind of generally their pay scale is. And then, if you're open to negotiate and you've spoken to the rest of your band and they've all said you can negotiate, then it's easy to have that discussion.
Sounds like a story behind that.
There's always lots of stories behind that. Just whoever's pitching, if you're pitching on behalf of a group of people, make sure that everyone in your band has agreed to what you're pitching, like the length of your set, the gear using, because sometimes I've had bands turn up and the person who's sold me the show has not explained to the band that they don't have all the stuff or they need this, and it ends up being a nightmare.
And just that, if people don't know, there's a thing called a delivered fee, and in that delivered fee, that means you pay that fee. Let's say it's $5,000, but a delivered fee means that you within that fee you're paying yourselves for flights, accommodation, ground transport, all those sorts of things. So that's something that people need to be aware of as well, right?
Especially if the festival you want to play is in a totally different city or a different island. So if you might get booked, and if you haven't checked with them that they're not paying for your flights or how you're getting there, that can be quite a big change, because you could end up paying 10 times the amount to get to the festival than you might make. But other times it's worth paying for your own flights if you get a good slot, say somewhere like Rhythm and Alps and you're from Whangarei. It might be worth, just doing some other small shows to pay to get there, to get that slot to play to 10,000 people or something.
What about you, Cuillin, in terms of that conversation around money and fees? Like, what's your approach?
I think just knowing your bottom line and what you need to be able to make that work for you and your group, especially if you're a soloist and have session musicians and things like that. And yes, sort of echoing what Gavin's saying, knowing if that opportunity outweighs the cost that it's going to bring to you if it isn't quite going to cover that bottom line.
You've got advice there. Okay, what's your top tips? Let's go through those top tips for pitching. I'm sure we've learned quite a bit about how you pitch. That emails are fine. Creating those relationships, it's okay to go back. Get your assets ready. Get your information. Make sure that all your socials are looking good. Have some live footage. Make sure that you've got your EPK. Maybe it's just a link that's got your tech rider. Know what your fee is in advance. Create those relationships. Anything else?
I think just just remember that it doesn't end just at landing the show. You've then got to keep your email, keep responding to emails, give the right the tech riders, and when you get to the show, being polite and nice to the crew and the people, because you never know what just keeping that relationship going, what show you might get offered after being at that show.
I think another good thing is know that the show you want to do physically fits into the space you're going to perform at, and that you can get set up in the shortest amount of time. So if you're going to a multi-band festival, like a homegrown or one of those things, and the stage is only 10 metres wide, there's no point having a 20-metre wide set piece. Also, if their changeover time is 30 minutes, make sure you can be set up in 10 minutes, because the bulk of the time, changeover times decrease throughout the day, and if you can't be set up in time, that'll just chew into your performance time. And even if you kind of have on your pitch and stuff, or when you've signed off that you want a sound check, a lot of the times on those big festivals you don't get sound checks, so you need to be able to have a show that works under those limitations. I've seen so many bands turn up with so much extra gear and they need to plug in their in-ear monitors and they just run out of time and their set gets cut down, or it's far too complicated. They're bringing in set pieces and the guitarists spend more time setting up the banner backdrops than they do setting up their gear, and then they start and there's no one on stage ready to play. So
prepare your festival
Prepare
set.
for the worst.
Yeah.
If you can prepare for the worst, you'll cope with anything.
John, what's your best tip for putting a good pitch together?
Thinking about it, I think one of the things that influences me are people that I respect in the industry that have been around a while. I'm talking about musicians. So I would suggest that you try and cultivate a network of mentors, Or if you're in a particular genre, invite people that are established in that genre. So you've got people from an act that come along to your show and go, wow, I really like that. Because quite often I get recommendations from industry or people who have been in the music industry who are performers, and they say, hey, John, you should check out this act. So that means a lot to me. So cultivate a mentor because the word does get around. It's a small industry.
And just watch what you say on social media too. Like if you have a bad experience with someone, you know, I don't know, they didn't book you and you're really hoping to play it, don't go on Instagram that night and call the promoter all kinds of words and then regret it the next day, because word does go around really quickly, and there's nothing worse than, you know, just the same as lots of bands are friends together, lots of promoter bookers are friends together, lots of those little circles exist. So if you kind of call someone something and then they'll be like, hey, did you see that band just called you this and this, and it could mean that you don't get booked by 10 other festivals. So yeah, if we all have days where you don't get what you want, you might get pissed off, but do it offline where people can't read what you're about to say.
Thank you for that tip. Have we got any questions on the floor?
Thank you. My question was, when you've got these events and these festivals, what's your process for pitching to funders or business partners? I think that's something that we've been talking about, artist pitches, but how do you guys go about pitching for your festivals to get off the ground? In terms of like the summer series?
It's basically for events that I've done in the past, we've looked at what our audience base might be. So if let's say the demographic is young people between 18 and 30, then you might look at products or brands that want to associate with those people, so you might be able to attain a sponsorship. If it's a licensed event, you can go down the route of going to alcohol companies that might want to be involved. So there's things like Jim Beam Homegrown. When I was with Laneways, I think we had Carlsberg or Tiger Beer, I think was one. So you kind of want to see where there's one sort of funding in that commercial world. Then there's also, in whichever city you are, there's also local city grants that come out of councils to do events, so you can apply for grants that way. You can also just look around and amongst the kind of community and see where you can gather funding from, or if there's an ability to get someone on board that might give you production really cheaply in lieu of something, or just, the branding or postering. So yeah, finding money is always difficult. It's not kind of easy for anyone, especially when you're selling tickets. Then it might just be a case of trying to get your tickets out early enough that you can, know you've got money coming in, and then you might have to go to a bank and say, this is my idea, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Your positioning of your event is quite important as well. I mean, we've had at Splore a number of corporates that have wanted to sponsor. We've declined because we don't think the fit's there. And sometimes with sponsors, we pick up the scenario of how they activate on site, so it doesn't look too commercial. And it's a tricky one, because if you look at the events industry worldwide, talking to Live Nation people overseas, basically they say the only way they make their festivals work commercially is by massive sponsorship deals and selling beer and getting a big beer sponsor. They're the two most profitable things in big events overseas: beer sales and sponsorship. So if you're a massive company like a Live Nation, obviously you can put together major sponsorship deals. As a smaller event, that's not feasible for you. So you're reliant on ticket sales primarily.
And just one thing is, don't spend the ticket money before the festival or your show's gone on. As we might have seen recently, Juicy Fest just did that. They spent all their money before the show went on. Show didn't go on. People wanted their money back. No one got it back. It's now liquidated and people are looking for it. So, yeah, if you can't afford to put your show on and you get a week out, just give the people their money back and revisit it next season. It's best not to get down that road.
Sorry, I just wanted to add something on the do's and don'ts. Please check your links work and can be opened by people, because it's the worst thing when you receive an email with a link to a Google Drive or a SoundCloud link and it doesn't work.
Or WeTransfer, and by the time you actually get to open it, it's closed for like a month ago.
And bullet points are awesome. Okay, we're going to wrap up now. Thank you all so much John, Gavin, Cuillin.
One other thing, one last thing. There's nothing wrong with going back and talking to the person you pitched to and saying, look, I know you didn't pick us, but could you tell us why we didn't get in this year? They might be able to say, oh, look, we had too many bands in this genre. We only pick a certain amount of things. It might be down to time. It might be other things. But what the answers they might give you might help you pitch the next time. Or it might just be, like we wanted to, but we'll put you on hold in case something comes up. So, yeah.
Can I just say I think that's a terrible idea?
Not to him. He doesn't want to talk to anyone else.
I thought that was exactly what you might say.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again. We are going to now move to Stories from the Road. Hang around for that one. But please join me in a round of applause for our wonderful guest.